Welcome, I'm Wasabi, and today I'm doing a quick review on a nice little module I ran last month called the Frozen Temple of Glacier Peak. I'm currently working on a bigger project for the Why You Should Play series, but since that project is going to take a while longer, I thought I'd dive into this before my channel becomes nothing but uploads from my Twitch.
It's usually good to move your rotation degrees to 90 at the top, just because it's...
Whoa!
Oh my god.
Oh
Wasabi,
god, I
no.
did. Glacier Peak is an OSR dungeon written for the Knave system by Robin Schferum. At least I think that's how that last name is pronounced. Anyway, I've never played Knave, so I decided to use old school essentials for it, and it worked out perfectly. The scenario, as the title suggests, is about a lost temple inside a mountain. At first, it starts off as a hazardous but more normal expedition, just trying to find the entrance to the temple. And once inside, the first areas have some more magical elements before diving into a far more fantastical dimension. This is probably a good time to mention spoilers. If you want your GM to run this for you, I've put the Drivethru RPG link in the description. The module is like $3 and completely worth it. That's the short and sweet, spoiler-free review right there. Anyway, I like to get the negativity out of the way first when reviewing something like this, especially if there aren't many negative aspects to even talk about. The broad layout of the book is great and very easy to navigate, but I feel like the individual rooms themselves could have taken a page from old school essentials when it comes to how a room reads the Game Master. Now, this could just be the way Knave has its modules laid out, and I'm just not aware, but I'll use an example from Winter's Daughter as comparison. Let's look at the Hall of Hounds in Winter's Daughter versus the Hall of Rituals in Glacier Peak. Keep in mind that I am also comparing a product made by an established RPG company against an independent author. Personally, I just find this kind of layout to be easier to read than a block of text, and both modules are designed as a low prep dungeon, and I find that the old school essential style lends itself better to a quick scan. I don't really think OSE is the be-all end-all of old school gaming, but their layout is some of the best in the OSR scene. Anyway, with my criticism out of the way, let's talk about the great material this module contains. This module has all the old school trappings that I want from a dungeon like this. It has a settlement outside the dungeon, in this case a mountain camp near Glacier Peak, bustling with adventurers, potential hirelings, merchants, and all kinds of opportunists. There's a table for story hooks if you're having trouble coming up with one yourself. Personally, my story hook was that a nearby Jarl tasked the party to map out and find out the temple's secrets before rival political leaders did the same. There's loads more tables in the scenario that could be used for other games you're running. There's a mushroom generator, alternative ways of running the adventure table, a rumor table like all the good dungeon crawls should have, random treasure, special events, and motivation tables, and the 3 different locations each have their own random events table. There's even a rival party and pre-gens that have stats for quick use, and there's still several more tables I haven't even mentioned. The dungeon crawl itself could be done in a session or two just by playing the module as is. However, you could easily extend this into a multi-part series if you want to, but I'll explain ways to do that near the end of the video. The Frozen Temple of Glacier Peak is broken up into 3 sections: the temple, the underground lake, and the spirit realm. I'm not going to be doing a room-by-room covering of this entire dungeon, but I will explain some highlights of each area. The temple itself is pretty subdued compared to what is to come, which I think works in its favor for the mounting weirdness the deeper the PCs go into the dungeon. You have several shrines in this area, and it's not described to be shrines to any specific god or pantheon, so feel free to add one from your own world if you want to. The shrines in my game were devoted to general nature spirits since it worked thematically. This level has some secrets as well as some good loot to be found by players who explore. I'm a fan of dungeons that have loot early on to incentivize players into exploring more. I think too many dungeons have a "oh no, you don't get anything yet" attitude to treasure, which tends to make players stop exploring as much in my experience and miss out on cool stuff later on. As for the treasure, one really cool item is the Frostbane liquid vials that can be found around this part of the dungeon. These can be used as weapons as they do damage if touched or ingested, but their main purpose is to melt ice rapidly that would otherwise take hours to break through. I think these potions are a brilliant piece of design because the first potion is easy to come across, but there are several locations that have ice that need melting if you want to explore further without taking forever to break through the ice the old-fashioned way, including the stairs leading further down into the dungeon. So this naturally leads the players to assume that there is more of this magic liquid around, leading them to explore the several rooms trying to find more, which they will. As for combat encounters in this area, there's only one in the entire floor, which is a giant frost centipede nesting in the ribcage of a skeleton. However, there is the random events table that you can roll on as time is passing, and it's possible to have an encounter with a rival party or a frost smilodon. I had my group encounter the horrifying Frost Smilodon, which I just changed to a Yeti instead of a saber-toothed tiger. I could pull some pseudo-intellectual reason out of my ass that bring a more fantastical creature contrasts well with the more subdued nature of the temple's first area, but the reality is I had no idea what a Frost Smilodon was because I ran the scenario with basically no prep, and I thought it was just like a Norwegian abominable snowman or something instead of just googling what it was. Anyway, I foreshadowed it when they were climbing the mountain that they could hear an inhuman shriek being carried across the winds, and then it followed them in and was loudly trudging through the halls. It's a nasty beast, but my player set up an ambush and killed it pretty handily with some ingenuity. If you end up changing the Smilodon to be Yeti like I did, I recommend going the extra mile that I wish I went for by using a sound clip that scarred me as a child. The sound the abominable snowman makes in the 1964 Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer Christmas special. I don't know what sick bastard designed that, but if that doesn't make your players get a move on when they are climbing the mountain, nothing will. This second section, which can be reached by melting the ice block in the stairs on the first floor, is by far the smallest area of the dungeon. Basically, you have a beach and then several islands connected by loose walkways. The final island has a big mountain troll sleeping on a large pile of bones and rubbish. He has a large sack that contains some amazing loot for any thieves or would-be slayers of the troll. It even contains an insta-kill item if they roll luckily on the table of stuff to loot while it's sleeping. A vial of liquid sunlight that turns the troll immediately to stone if some is poured onto it. My party tried killing him in his sleep by dropping the frostbane liquid into his mouth, as they hadn't checked the sack for fear of waking it. The frostbane liquid did 1 point of damage, woke it up, and they proceeded to fight for their lives. The mountain troll could barely get any hits on the players, and after a grueling battle, finally they killed him and salvaged all his loot. Most fights with the mountain troll will end in a total party wipe, so I recommend really describing how gigantic the troll is even laying down, as well as how thick its hide looks. My party got extremely lucky. The way out of this area and onto the next is by either entering the water and getting sucked down to the bottom and being spat out the other side, or by making an offering to the shrine on the middle island, creating a descending staircase from the middle island to the bottom of the lake. The group had backed off enough to fight the mountain troll on the island with the shrine, and the final attack was a critical hit, so I had a large amount of the troll blood spray into the shrine's offering bowl, causing the portal to open as a worthy offering. The altar is just described as having strange carvings on it, and I would recommend describing those carvings to symbolize either a doorway, or in some way hint that the shrine leads to something. I failed to mention that, and since there were already several shrines earlier in the dungeon, I don't think the party really picked up on anything being different about this shrine compared to those ones. Also, funny side note about this area, there is a fishing rod in this section and you can go fishing, so that technically makes this dungeon a JRPG. So the Spirit Realm is cool as hell. This is based on Sami legends about certain lakes leading to other dimensions, which I think is just a really cool and fun premise that could be used for many more RPG stories. This is also where everything gets turned upside down and the descent from classic dungeon crawl starts to go more into a Vaesen direction. I think there's a lot of cool stuff here for you to discover yourself, so I won't mention everything, but I will describe just a handful of cool things you can find here. This section does become more of a funhouse dungeon, but it works thematically due to it being a spirit/fey realm, and there is still a level of verisimilitude throughout this area. Anyway, some cool highlights are a gemstone cavern that greedy PCs can pry gemstones from, a Grey Dwarf Forge Master trapped and chained in his own secret forge, a room filled with petrified trolls in various poses, all with expressions of agony, a room of rolling hills and lush meadows underneath an azure sky with several different creatures in the area that can be met, talked with, or fought with, a throne room with the huge bones of a troll king sitting in the throne, his gigantic golden crown stuck on his head, and several more cool locations. Finally, the last room contains a massive treasure vault guarded by an evil lindworm. The lindworm is no joke, and a party attempting to slay the lindworm and steal as much treasure as they can needs to be cunning and quick. My small group was able to slay it by blinding it so it couldn't turn them to stone, and were able to do enough damage before its bite and acidic sprays killed them all. Honestly, the fact that the group was able to do so well against the Yeti, Mountain Troll, and Lindworm still astonishes me. They were smart, of course, but holy crap did they ever get lucky. This is not a pushover dungeon by any means, and the vast amount of cool treasure really makes it worth it for the players to dig deep into many parts of this dungeon, find cool stuff that's just around the corner, but it won't be gained easily. So, if you're using this as part of a bigger campaign, for example, I did a video a few months ago on the Frozen Kingdom zine, which this module would work great in, there are a few things I recommend doing to make this more interesting. First, if you want this to be an area that the players stay in, it'd be really cool for the PCs to see the Summit base camp evolve into a small frontier town. With tents slowly being replaced by ramshackle buildings, new merchants come in, and perhaps having a few established amenities such as a blacksmith appear. I also think it does add to the experience for the players that the rival party makes themselves known to the group in town, where there's a level of civility upheld, but can still be established as enemies to watch out for. Such as it being obvious that the rival party is working for a competitor to the PCs, the rival party boasting their own achievements and insulting the PCs, or even a bar fight that gets broken up before the swords and spells come out. Even better if the rival party was established before in an earlier scenario or location, and this is a nasty coincidence. The module is also open enough that this in-game world development can be easily justified by the game master either creating more content or grabbing more content from another module. Perhaps it gets back to the PCs that a section of the temple collapsed, revealing new sections, or perhaps there are other temples in the mountain range to be explored. The Spirit Realm being vague also makes it easy, as the lake could potentially lead to new places each time, or the Fae that reside there can show the PCs new areas in exchange for favors. Another idea that comes to mind is grabbing a mega dungeon like Barrow Maze and just stripping off a lot of the flavor, and just using the underground sections as newly discovered ancient catacombs that were frozen underneath the ice but have been revealed by some expeditions. Obviously, the extra stuff you can do is endless like any RPG premise. I just thought I'd give some ideas if anyone likes the location and wants to do a campaign set in a brutal and unwelcome freezing environment, but doesn't really know how to start. I don't think the Frozen Temple of Glacier Peak will make you see RPGs in a new light or rock your world, but it's a really solid dungeon crawl filled with oodles of content. And for $3 for the PDF on Drivethru or $15 for the print plus PDF on Exalted Funeral, I think you're getting your money's worth from this scenario. I didn't even touch upon a bunch of the really cool monsters or some of the fun magic items because I think it's better for you to discover that stuff for yourself, but I had a lot of fun with this module and I look forward to seeing what other stuff this author produces in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more from me, I'm currently doing a Dungeon Crawl Classics actual play on Twitch called the Pile of Shame campaign. It's a campaign where its entire existence is predicated on me shamelessly getting through my backlog of DCC scenarios I've accrued over the last few years. We play it live every 2 weeks, and the episodes go up the following day on this channel. Also, if you'd like to see a So Bad It's Good movie review, I reviewed a really bad horror film called Tabernacle 101 a few months ago that I highly recommend watching. Anyway, play smart, play risky, and have yourselves a good one, and I'll see you next time.